of human-tiger interactions in and around the Kaziranga Tiger Reserve. She has helped in generating awareness on wildlife conservation among school students, livelihood augmentation among local communities living in the fringe villages of Manas and Kaziranga and Pakke tiger reserves. She also trained the staff of the Forest Department of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh in field monitoring techniques of population estimation of tigers, co-predators, and prey in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. She also studied the interactions of elephants with humans along with their mitigation measures in the fringe areas of Kaziranga Tiger Reserve and the Golaghat Forest Division in Assam. For a brief period, she worked with the Nature Conservation Foundation, NCF Bangalore, and contributed to the scientific writing and tiger prey density estimation in the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary in Karnataka. She has worked at the Azim Premji University, Bangalore, in collecting archival data on the impact of ecology and the environmental change in Bangalore and its surroundings. At present, Pallabi is working in the Wildlife Institute of India, Category 2 Center under the auspices of the UNESCO. Here, she has assisted as course director of the Master's Course in Heritage Conservation and Management. It is our great pleasure to have you, Ms. Pallabi Chakraborty, with us today. Over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you so much, Movin. Thank you so much, Department of Zoology, Government College Sanquelim, if I'm not mistaken, the pronunciation, Goa, for giving me this opportunity to talk to all the students on the occasion of Wildlife Week 2021. Well, many of you don't know, I think that Movin and I, we have been college friends back in the day, and it gives me immense pleasure to actually now professionally relate with Movin, and this makes me humble and really grateful for this opportunity to actually ignite young minds on this occasion. So thank you, Movin. Thank you, Department of Zoology. Thank you, Ms. Pujari. Thank you. So today, on this occasion, I just want to not talk to you of anything too serious. I want to tell you three stories which changed my life, which made me learn a lot, which gave me valuable experience in the field of wildlife conservation. So without further ado, I'll just share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so yeah. So if without further ado, just let me start, and I'll just close my, just a second. Just give me just a second, yeah. So my story begins here. In the land of the Brahmaputra, at a small facility for wild animals. It was the monsoon of 2010, and my friends and I signed up for a volunteering program at the Center of Wildlife Rehabilitation and Conservation. This was my first field experience or interaction with the wild animals at close proximity. I was in charge of assisting the animal keepers in feeding baby animals. Now you can imagine the thrill and excitement and also nervousness of actually coming in close contact with wild animals. These animals, these baby animals, whom I took the responsibility of feeding, artificial formula for their growth. They were either orphaned due to floods, were injured in accidents, or were lost in the wilderness. My heart went out to them, but I was taught to have minimum contact with them. They would be eventually released in the wild. So what happens is, when these animals are hand raised by humans, the best and the most advisable rule of thumb is to have minimum contact with them, so that they do not get used to their human keepers. And when they are released back into the wild, they can retain some of
Excuse
their.
me, Pallavi.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Pallavi. Can you
Yeah.
please do a presentation or share your screen with us, because we can see all the slides.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have already started screening the slideshow.
Okay.
So yeah, can you see any movement now?
We can see the panel, the slide panel on the side.
Well, I have started the this thing. Okay, I'll just stop sharing. I'll just begin again. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I have started it again. Can you
Yes,
see
this is
my
better.
slideshow now? Is it visible?
Yes, we can see your the slides
Yes,
now.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's
And
very,
I'm sorry for the
it's correct.
technical glitch there. Yeah, okay. So yeah, uh, so so here I was I'm sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. Yeah, so here I was taught to actually have minimum contact with them, as I was saying. And when they are released in wild, they will so that they retain their wild characteristics, they grow up to fend for themselves. That's why we were allowed minimum contact with them. So you can see this photo where I'm actually feeding the baby rhinos. They were always very hungry, very curious, and though I really wanted to actually, touch them and really correct, just be with them, I had to control my caring or my inquisitiveness, and we would just feed them the milk formula which was provided to us. That was a special formula for baby animals. We would feed them about 3 to 4 times a day, about 2 liters of milk each. This is my friend with me who joined for volunteering at the center. The second picture you can see of a leopard, which looks very friendly and calm at the moment, but very aggressive and very hungry all the time. So what we would do is we would just not go inside the inside its facility, obviously. Otherwise, we would become its food. We would hold out a big long stick inside its cage, with meat, raw meat, cow meat at its end, and it would just come and grasp it and munch on it very hungrily. And the third photo you can see, it's a baby civet. It's a common palm civet, which was very uh, very painfully, it had lost its mother, and they had brought it into the facility. And it's not a very big animal anyway, so but it is a carnivore. So you can see it started nibbling on my finger, thinking it's to be its mother. But yeah, that was the only time I saw it, or took it into my arms and fed it, not my arm, of course, but milk. And after that, you can see the cage just down below, and it was fed from the cage from then on. So if you have an idea of Northeast India, this is you can see the location of Northeast India in the map, where Kaziranga National Park is situated. So this facility, the CWRC, or the Center for Wildlife Rehabilitation and Conservation, is situated somewhere in the Panbari corridor. If you see, I hope you can see the Panbari corridor marked there. So it's there. So it's very close to the Kaziranga National Park. So that's why they had lots of animal rescues. So I'll just talk about the CWRC, uh, which is the only facility in India where orphaned or injured wild animals of several species are hand raised and are treated subsequently, with an aim to release in the wild. Strategically located in the Borjari village, adjacent to the Panbari Reserve Forest near Kaziranga National Park in Assam, the center attends to a wide range of wildlife emergencies resulting from natural or anthropogenic causes. Since its launch in 2002, the center has handled close to 4,500 animal cases, with nearly 60% released back in the wild. The CWRC was established in August 2002 with the primary aim to stabilize displaced animals and release them back into the wild as close to the site of rescue as possible, following the necessary treatment. The center follows accepted international protocols and guidelines during the rescue, treatment, and rehabilitation of the displaced or distressed animals. The animal care duties at the center are handled by 2 wildlife veterinarians with the assistance of several animal keepers who are trained to handle wild animals. It has essential veterinary infrastructure, including an examination clinic, a surgery theater, and an evolving preliminary disease investigation laboratory. It also has spacious holding shelters for birds, reptiles, ungulates, and primates, enclosures for big cats like tigers and leopards, as you've seen, and nurseries for outdoor paddocks for mega herbivores such as elephants and rhinos. A mobile veterinary service comprising an all-terrain vehicle equipped with necessary medical supplies to attend to wildlife emergencies is also stationed at the CWRC. A vital component of the center, the MVS unit, helps reach in situ medical aid, in situ, you all understand, and to aid to stranded, displaced, or distressed animals. This is in addition to its role as an ambulance, facilitating the movement of animals to the center or back to the wild. Now, this is about CWRC and where I actually learned about one of the important aspects of wildlife conservation, that is rescue and rehabilitation. If you all have some idea about rescue and rehabilitation, I'll just tell you what it actually means under the IUCN definition. A rescue is the movement of wild animals to mitigate against a hazardous situation, in this case, accidents or orphan baby animals, or to resolve human-wildlife conflicts in an attempt to improve their welfare as well as the welfare of people. And what is the rehabilitation? It is a managed process by which a displaced, sick, injured, or orphaned wild animal regains the health and skills it requires to manage functionally, to function normally, and live self-sufficiently in the wild. Um, so,
Miss Miss
yeah,
Pallavi,
Movin?
yeah,
Yeah,
you mentioned talking of rescue, and
yes.
looking at some of your visuals, I thought of like uh, rescuing of wild animals. It's a question that I have. Like, uh, how what have you got to say about animal rescue as a personally?
Um, Personally, when I started my work, rescue of animals meant that any animal which is in distress, we have a duty to actually, take them and take them out from the place and put it where they belong. But as I worked in the wildlife conservation field for so many years, seeing the practical demonstration of how rescue is done now is very different. I just read out the definition of rescue to you, which IUCN defines. But now, when you see, on Facebook or on social media, people living near any wildlife or any forested habitat, encounter with wildlife is very common, especially birds, snakes, small animals, small these things, civets, I can tell you. So what these some amateur youth, amateur wildlife rescuers do nowadays is, anytime a wild animal enters a human habitation, they go and capture it. Okay. Now these people may or may not be professionally trained, but they take it upon their hands to actually do the animal good. Whereas in reality, leaving the animal where it is with least disturbance, with a passageway to move out of the house or the habitation on its own, is the best thing to do. So that's what my opinion is whenever you come across any of you come across any sort of animal which has entered human habitation, anybody's house, first and foremost is to let the animal be and keep the passages, keep the outlets and inlets open, free, so that the animal can move out. If the animal is injured or staying for a little while longer, you should not take this operation into your hands. Please contact the local forest department or a local certified professional animal handler, so that he or she can come and with a team and proper equipment, take the animal out. If the animal is in the vicinity, living near the vicinity, please do not, go out and check for any, babies or some other things which it might carry. Please just, let the professional do their duty with full honesty. I request that. And yeah, so rescue is that, and rehabilitation obviously follows most of the rescues. In many of the cases, the rescued animal is injured and is unable to fend for itself in the wild, and it is kept in this facility for a lifetime. So that's the answer, Movin.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah. So just to carry on, continue with the story. I also, was part of these programs where they have reintroduced a wild animal from one habitat to the other. Now, reintroduction, as you can just have an idea, is to introduce an animal again in a place where it was originally found, where its population had disseminated for any reason, either anthropogenic or natural causes. Now, if you see here, there are two photographs. Is everybody able to see?
We're able to see.
Yeah. So this first photograph, you can see a big rhinoceros being just out of the vehicle. You can see the green color crate where it was carried. This rhino and its baby calf, they were captured from Kaziranga National Park and were released in Manas Tiger Reserve as a part of a reintroduction program. Now, in Manas Tiger Reserve, Manas National Park, rhinos had become extinct due to some disturbances, which I'll talk to you about later. And to And rhinos are actually known to be habitat architects, very important for the ecology. And Manas being the native habitat of rhinos, and it's the same species which is found in Kaziranga. The authorities, the Manas Authority and the Government of India decided that they will reintroduce rhinos and make the population rebound. So this was part of that program, the first reintroduction. And the second second photograph, you can see a leopard being released, also from the same locality, from Kaziranga to Manas. This leopard was actually caught, as part of it was involved in human leopard conflict. It had come out of the forest and had started killing lot of cows, and had also, and had also attacked one man in the village. So during the same time, these two animals were caught, the leopard and the rhino. And the leopard was actually kept in CWRC for some time to check whether it is healthy. Now, once they had ascertained that it is healthy, it was together taken with the rhino in different vehicles and released on the same site. So now, after all these years, we actually could identify this leopard and this mother calf doing very well, and they have actually established their, a new population there. Leopards were already there. So this is a male leopard which actually mated with a female, and now we could see the, calves doing very well there. So this is the end of my story. If anyone has any question, you can ask me, or I can continue with my next story.
I think we can carry on with the next story, Pallabi.
Okay. Thanks, Movin. The next story actually begins in the western part of Assam. You can see in the map, in Manas. Manas is a national park and a tiger reserve, and is also a World Heritage Site, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was the winter of 2010 when I set foot in the land of the Emerald Forest, on a gentle slope in the foothills of the Himalayas, where wooded hills give way to the alluvial grasslands and tropical forests. Manas is home to a great variety of wildlife: tigers, pygmy hogs, wild buffalo, elephants, Bengal floricans, etc. Here I experienced the gentle waves of the Beki River and saw my first fresh tiger pug marks. We were estimating the number of tigers, leopards, clouded leopards, wild dogs, and their prey, for the results would help in putting back Manas in the World Heritage List. Now, what is a World Heritage List? A World Heritage is actually any cultural or natural site, a site with cultural natural significance, which is so exceptional as to transcend national boundaries and to be of common importance for present and future generations of all humanity. These sites are designated by the UNESCO's World Heritage Convention. This property to be designated as a World Heritage Site should have outstanding universal value, having either one or more of 10 designated criteria, either cultural or natural. Its extent should be truthfully and credibly expressed. The boundary of the property should be well defined administratively, and the measure and it should have an integrity where the measure of the wholeness or intactness of the natural or cultural heritage and its attributes are properly defined. The property must also have adequate legislative, regulatory, institutional, and/or traditional protection and management to ensure their safeguarding, which is sustained or enhanced over time. Now coming to Manas Tiger Reserve, it is spread over Kokrajhar, the districts of Kokrajhar, Chirang, Baksa and Udalguri districts of the Bodoland territorial region of Assam. The dominant community living there is the Bodo tribe, who practice the Batho religion. The Bodo people wanted a separate political representation in India's electorate from as early as the 1920s, it being a very minor tribe. The All Bodo Students' Union, which was formed in 1966, initially put forth their demand for a separate union territory in 1967, and then for a separate state in 1986, in order for the central government of the country to recognize equality, economic and social justice, rights to land, language and culture, and political rights. The demand turned into a movement and then an agitation, with more points added in the agenda in 1989. The steps taken by the then Chief Minister of Assam to curb the agitation resulted in violent reactions, and a lot of Bodo and non-Bodo people were killed in the clashes. A section of the agitators formed the Bodo Security Force in 1986, which later reorganized itself as the National Democratic Front of Bodoland in 1994. Another section formed the Bodo Liberation Tigers in 1996, and these groups continued the agitation. For a decade and a half, that is from 1989 to 2003, the ethnic clashes continued to ravage the life and property of the people of the region, along with exertion of pressure on its natural resources to fuel the conflict. Manas suffered the brunt of the conflict. Wildlife was hunted, trees were incessantly felled, forest camps were burnt down, and forest staffs were robbed of their weapons. In 2003, after the formation of the Bodoland Territorial Council, the agitation was controlled and life started to get back to normal in the newly formed Bodoland Territorial Areas districts. However, a faction of the NDFB separated from its parent body due to differing ideologies and continued to operate in the 2010s in some areas, including the Tiger Reserve. They carried on felling of trees, hunting wildlife, and supporting encroachments in the buffer areas of the Tiger Reserve. So the wildlife sanctuary or the World Heritage Site faced a lot of threats, and due to the monitoring and evaluation by the UNESCO's team, it was put in the World Heritage Site in danger. This was a very shameful, a very sad fact, and the government of India and the BTC, they decided that steps should be taken to improve its condition, to improve its biodiversity, to remove the threat by reactive monitoring and by regular monitoring and better management activities, protection activities. Once known for its variety and density of wildlife, Manas has experienced around 2 decades of armed political unrest, which took a toll on the animal species and people alike, with severe depletion in prey and predator populations, along with their habitat. Due to its deteriorating condition due to the deteriorating status of the World Heritage Site, Manas was enlisted on the World Heritage Site in danger in 1992, only 6 years after its inscription, which was in 1985. After 15 years of struggle, consistent proactive protection measures by the district, state, and central administration resulted in a gradual reduction of illegal logging and felling of trees and poaching, along with improvement in security conditions from 2006-07 onwards. Following this, a joint UNESCO-IUCN mission was sent to the site in 2008 to evaluate the progress in achieving remedial measures and implementing the recommendations of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, and to set a time frame for their completion. As a part of the measures recommended by the mission, the park staff and the researchers from NGOs like WWF India, Aranyak, and A-Tree collaborated to conduct a comprehensive baseline survey of key wildlife species in 2009-10. As part of the WWF India team, along with 7 other volunteers, we surveyed the Manas Tiger Reserve along with the buffer areas, the Ripuchirang Elephant Reserve, where we found good evidence of wildlife coming back in its population, and it's reviving back. The protection and the management strategies, along with the resultant improvement in forest and wildlife recovery, were acknowledged as a great revival story by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. Thus, Manas was withdrawn from the World Heritage List in danger in 2011. So this was my journey in Manas. And you can see wildlife and people thriving now. And it is one of the shining crowns of Assam right now. So this is the end of my second story. If there is any question.
Pallavi, what was one lesson that you learned as a wildlife professional, say at Manas?
I learned one of my most important lessons while working in Manas is that wherever you go, wherever you work, in a site which is away from your home, you need to make contacts, make strategic points of references, points of contacts with all the stakeholders in the area, including the defense people like the police, the forest department, of course, the defense, the army, the local people, the local communities, the politicians, the administration, the school teachers, the students, the children, and all the all the businessmen who are working there. In this way, you actually build your network, and if there is any threat, because you are new to the area, any threat or any sort of disturbance, you get the first-hand information, and you can be alert, and you can save a lot of time and energy in being safe and secure. You have heard about the Bodo ethnic conflicts which had taken place, and this area still remains vulnerable to any attack, and politically it's just stabilizing. So it becomes more important to have these contacts and make friends with everybody, so that you are safe and you can do your work in a very unbridled and undisturbed way. So yeah, building contacts is building your network is one big lesson I learned from Manas.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to my next story. My third and last story begins at a public meeting at a village in Assam, where the park officials, WWF officials, and the villagers have gathered to discuss the latest incidents of tiger lifting the cattle. As the park director stood up to begin his speech, one young man stood up and stopped the director. The director politely asked the young man the reason and asked him to speak up. The man said, "Sir, every time any of us lose a cow, you people silence us by giving some money. Do you realize what we actually lose when your tigers kill our animals?" Now, this man you can see is the youth leader over there, and very vocal, very honest, and very concerned. And you can see the people who are sitting at the other side of the table are the authorities of the Kaziranga National Park, who were faced with this unpopular or unpleasant truth of what actually goes on when tigers or wild animals actually harm or cause harm to the villagers. 。  . 。 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 .
。
So I'll just go to the map where Kaziranga is shown. So this, you can see the blue area is the Brahmaputra River, and the Kaziranga National Park is a riverine area actually, and a lot of it's a flat land, and a lot of villages are actually situated just outside the park boundaries. Now, as it so happens, during different times of the year, now Assam being a very flood-prone area, during monsoon, heavy monsoon, the whole Kaziranga gets flooded, and of course the entire villages also get flooded. During this time, and sometimes also during the winter season, animals, wild animals living inside the park come out of the forest to take shelter during monsoon in higher grounds to save themselves. And in that process, you can see they come in contact with people, they come in contact with cattle, they come in contact with other livestock as well. You can see in the next photograph elephants and a wall, which is actually stopping them to go across. And you can, in the third photograph, you can see a tiger sitting on what seems to be a bedroom in a hut in a village. Now, these visuals are very common in and around Kaziranga National Park, where animals come in close proximity, come in close encounter with people, and as a result, cause a lot of harm. Animals harm the people, and people in turn harm the animals. What happens is, this is called human-elephant conflict, human-wildlife conflict. Now, the growing populations, the rapid change in land use patterns, loss or degradation of critical wildlife habitats, changes in attitudes and perceptions towards wildlife, and conflict and generational aspirational shifts have significantly altered the conservation landscape over the last few decades. As a result of these changes, animals and humans often find themselves in a position of conflict as the competition for food and space intensifies, leading to fatalities on both sides. In recent times, human-wildlife conflict has become a serious threat to the survival and several endangered species across the world. Direct contact with wildlife occurs in both urban and rural areas, but it is generally more common around protected areas where wildlife population densities are higher and animals often stray into adjacent cultivated fields or grazing areas. Attacks on humans and livestock depredation by carnivores and crop predation by elephants and their other herbivores are the most common prevalent forms of conflict in India. In the northeastern state of Assam, human-wildlife conflict are among the most common issues that have emerged in recent times. Conflict with leopards also have been found to be common in these sub-regions, in this region. Such conflicts invariably result in the loss of human lives, livestock depredation, large and small-scale property or crop damage, and retaliatory killing of animals by poisoning or shooting. Human-animal conflicts have also contributed towards the decline of elephant and tiger populations across the state. Thus, reducing and managing the impact of the conflict incidents has thus become critical to successful wildlife conservation efforts. WWF India initiated a study on the status of wildlife corridors between Kaziranga and the adjoining district of Karbi Anglong, namely, yeah, can I continue?
Continue.
Sorry, yeah. So during that study of corridors, it was observed that livestock depredation by tigers was prevalent in the fringe villages and was highest in the Haldibari area, which connects connects the Kaziranga and Karbi Anglong districts. The situation became grim when a tigress with cubs became a victim of retaliatory killing in a tea estate in December 2007. By 2008, an excessively negative response towards the forest department was observed among villagers because several among them had lost their livestock to tigers. Ex gratia payments for livestock killed by carnivores through the government compensation schemes were constricted due to the availability of funds or lack of funds, which led to significant delays. The consultation of available records of the past instance in the range officers revealed a gap in the regular flow of information as well as in systematic documentation of livestock depredation cases. It was during this period that WWF India offered to bring together village residents and the forest department on a common platform through various meetings and campaigns to discuss and understand the needs related to tiger conflict cases. Thus, in 2008 July, an interim relief scheme was jointly initiated by WWF India and Kaziranga Park Authority to reduce retaliatory killings by the human-tiger conflict affected people. During this period, starting from this period, we formed a committee, a joint committee, where the department staff and the people and the officials of WWF reached a point of contact, an incident location where the tiger had killed or injured a livestock. We would take stock of the situation. We would collect all the necessary information from there and verify the information and disburse a sum, a compensation sum, then and there, without further ado. This we saw actually brought down retaliatory action by the people. But as I first told you about these village youth who actually stood up during one of those meetings and questioned the authorities about how it actually feels to lose an animal which is more than earning a livelihood. These are tough questions wildlife conservationists have to face every day. This is less violent, even we have to face violence as well. Wildlife conservation is actually a very stressful, very trying field of occupation. But when we see animals thriving, when we see an animal passage secured, when we see a wildlife sanctuary declared, when we see the tiger numbers increasing, we feel a sense of satisfaction. And these problems, these practical problems, we tend to forget them for the time being. So this constant learning of lessons actually keep us going. And I'm actually very passionate. I'm very proud and very lucky to be able to actually contribute little to this field of conservation and to do my bit. So yeah, with that, I come to the end of my stories. I hope I could generate some interest in the young minds. In case any of you want to actually, explore the world of conservation, world of wildlife conservation, you can always get involved with these institutes and these services and do your bit. So with this, I just come to an end. Thank you.
We leave this open for questions. Is there anyone who has a question? You may type it in the chat box or you may ask the question directly. Pallabi, I have a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you come across situations in which you have encountered wild animals when you didn't expect them? And how do you handle these situations?
Yeah. So a lot of times, actually, I have encountered wild animals when I least expected them, which is mostly during my survey works inside the forest. I do remember a case when we were actually counting the number of prey species, that is deer and other wild herbivores in Kaziranga National Park again. And the grassland actually in the Kaziranga National Park can get really high, really tall. So we did carry on the survey on foot for some distance, and then we actually had to climb on top of the back of an elephant, a trained elephant, to do the survey. During that leg, when we were on top of the elephant, we were a group of 3 people. Uh, the elephant Mahout, the forest guard, and me. I was taking the data. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a mother rhino and its calf charged us. Now, it's a very uneven surface. It's a grassland, it's a forest. And the elephant, being bigger than a rhino, is scared of the rhino, because the rhino actually gets very aggressive, especially when it is lactating. It had a calf with it, and they can give a very nasty bite to elephants. So in order to avoid that bite, the elephant started running for its life. And you might have seen elephant safaris on Indian wildlife channels, where they show these people going for elephant safaris on a big howdah. There were no howdahs for us. We were sitting on top of gunny bags, and we were holding by the rope the elephant's trunk. And as the elephant moved from terrain to terrain, from grassland to woodland, we were just holding on to our dear life, literally by the rope, and and we were just hoping that we don't fall down, and from the height of about 8-9 feet. So that was one really scary incident. Thankfully, the forest guard who was with us did not lose his nerve. He shot a blank fire in the air, and the rhino was taken aback. It was shocked, and it stopped right there. So one was that, and there were these other incidents when there were wild buffaloes actually stopping our vehicle right on the trail, and it would not let us go, and we would have to wait for about an hour or so just to let the buffalo pass. Sorry. So yeah, those are the encounters I can remember.
Thank you for that response, Pallavi. I can imagine what it would be like for you to be chased by an angry rhino. Renuka Panchal has a question for you. She says, ma'am, as you said that you rescue animals which are in stress, what type of stress do animals face?
Thank you, Renuka, for the question. So I have not been involved in directly rescuing an animal, but the different stress levels which actually an animal goes through is when an animal is trying to take shelter from the flood to the higher grounds. Now in Kaziranga, if you have seen the map, a road actually cuts across the Kaziranga and the other district. Okay, so this animals have to actually cross through the road and move to the higher grounds. It's a highway, it's a national highway, and a lot of vehicles actually traverse that highway. And speeding vehicles sometimes cause injury to the animals. So one would be this physical injury. During the monsoons, it happens more. Sometimes the animals carrying babies with them get lost. Either the baby is stranded somewhere because the water level is too high for it to traverse. So that way it leaves behind the mom leaves behind the calf. Sometimes during the flooding season, people sometimes hunt for deer. So the injured deer, which is actually hunted or injured by the people, in in frantic situations tries to run about and ends up in a village, and the heartbeat is so high that it could actually suffer a heart attack and die. uh, yeah, and these are the various conditions actually. There are birds which actually come in, which collide with speeding vehicles. There are smaller animals which actually come across these situations. Yeah, and of course, wildlife conflict also sometimes when there are retaliatory action by the people with their sticks and all, they start beating the animals, and those animals are not dead but are actually getting tortured. So the CWRC and Forest Department rescues them and takes them to their facility to treat them and then release them in the wild. So yeah, these are some of the handful of stress conditions.
Thank you, Pallavi, for that response to Renuka's question. Thank you, Renuka, for the question. We have no more questions. Uh, uh, I think we will close the session, but before we close, I invite one of my colleagues to give us to give a vote of thanks. Ms. Shainaz will speak to us.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Our speaker for the day, Ms. Pallabi Chakraborty, Head of the Department of Zoology, Dr. Vaibhav Chindarkar, colleagues and my dear students. As we move to the end of today's webinar, on behalf of Zoology Department of Government College Arts, Science and Commerce, Sanquelim, I would like to express my gratitude to the speaker, Ms. Pallabi Chakraborty. Thank you, Ms. Pallabi, for sharing your time, your experiences, and your wisdom with us. I was very happy to hear your first-hand experiences and could vividly imagine what it must be like to be a conservation professional. I thank you on behalf of the students of our college. I'm sure listening to you, some of our students must be contemplating becoming a conservationist. I'm sure we all have been teleported across India to the forest of Assam through your experiences. Thank you once again, Ms. Pallabi, and the Department of Zoology wishes you all the best in your future endeavors. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Vaibhav Chindarkar, Head of the Department of Zoology, for his motivation and support. I congratulate Mr. Morvan Fernandez, Assistant Professor in Zoology, for successfully organizing such an informative talk. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. Thank you one and all.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pallavi, and thank you everyone for joining.